Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Dream Unfinished YouTube show, our fourth episode. We'll talk a little bit about Instruments for Change, which is learning about people and resources in the community that are doing wonderful, incredible work. My name is Sarah Overton. I'm the production manager for the Dream Unfinished, and I'm joined today by the Dream Unfinished's co-founder and executive director, Eun Lee.
So again, we are not experts in things other than you on cello and me on a good day on clarinet. But I would put some money on the idea that Harriet Tubman would be all for interracial solidarity. And she is the topic of our episode today, not only in terms of just sharing some really surprising insights that we've been able to come across in this biography that our team has been reading, as well as this aria that is very much inspired by Tubman and comes from a larger work that's inspired by Tubman. So Sarah, if you want to take us to talking around veterans issues now, and we'll explain why Harriet Tubman matters to that.
Yeah. Quickly, I want to just acknowledge that we're not entirely sure when Harriet Tubman's birthday is, the exact date, but allegedly it was on March 15th. So happy belated birthday to Harriet Tubman. That kind of spurred our conversation for today. And as we were thinking about everything that everyone knows about this magnificent person, we're trying to find ways that we can highlight and show her and expand the person, the myth, the legend, and really think differently about that. So Harriet Tubman was in fact a veteran, and so we're going to talk a little bit about veteran services in the United States today. So most recently we had 3-3 news for the House and Senate Veterans Affairs Committee at the annual joint hearing on March 3rd. Leaders from the Minority Veterans of America and the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans sat for the first time with organizations that are invited each year to give their views on current veterans affairs. And we thought that it was so telling, in this moment, that this was the first time that those two particular organizations had a seat at the table, here. And related to Harriet Tubman too, vets and vets of color are often the marginalized of the marginalized groups. In 2014, minorities composed about 22% of the total veteran population in the United States. And in 2040, they're projected to make about 35.7% of all living veterans. Minority veterans are almost twice as likely to live in poverty as non-minority veterans at about 11% and 6% respectively. And veterans of any race and ethnicity are about 50% more likely to become homeless compared with all Americans. And that risk is even greater with veterans living in poverty and poor minority veterans. So it's we're thinking about just kind of how America is the track record of minority veterans in America, and especially after going to war or seeing combat, it's really difficult for veterans to get the help that they need. We're talking about service-connected disabilities here. In 2019, there were 1.66 million U.S. veterans who were listed to have a service-connected disability, and it's likely that number even is a little bit underrepresented. Recent studies say that about 60% of service-connected disability denials are denied in error. So people that need this service, need all of the benefits that come with service-connected disabilities, may be erroneously denied. And that appeals process takes up to 2 years on average. And this is a track record. This is something that happens consistently. Among World War I veterans, 85% of all disability claims were denied. And just knowing kind of how this history of treatment of veterans and Veterans Affairs has kind of progressed in this country. We're seeing a lot more attention on it now, on homelessness and homeless veterans specifically, and veterans of color. And we have a number of orgs that are, really helpful to veterans. There's the MVA, the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Soldiers to Scholars is another wonderful organization that helps veterans kind of through the education pipeline. So when we think about Harriet Tubman and not only the tremendous obstacles that she had to overcome as a former enslaved person, kind of going through the Underground Railroad, rescuing and saving a lot of people and guiding people to freedom, she was also really prescient of the ways in which post-World War II veterans, particularly veterans of color, have been kind of let down and unsupported when they're transitioning back to civilian life. So she's, I think, is a really incredible example of a veteran and a military hero. And I know that you have some thoughts after reading her bio and reading this book on her. And I'd love to hear some of those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to just, again, as Sarah pointed out, that we know this sort of typical story around Harriet Tubman and like her biography as an abolitionist. But not many people are aware of really the kind of military service that she had. And so I have this great article that I just wanted to share really quickly from the Smithsonian. The first reason why I want to share it is, number one, it has a young photo of Harriet Tubman, which I think is just so powerful, because just to see there's, I think, the sort of legend of Harriet Tubman, often we see, the photos of her much later in her life when she's kind of like wizened and very petite and like kind of wrapped up in a shawl. Whereas here, like, you see, this was taken probably in her 40s. And you can see and imagine and sort of see in her facial expression too, like, yes, this woman risked everything 70 times to rescue others who were trapped in slavery. And yes, this woman had actually this extraordinary military service. So just to read a little bit more about it. So among many of the other things that she's done, she became the first woman in American history to lead a military assault. And the successful Combahee ferry raid freed more than 700 slaves in a chaotic scene. So just to give a little bit of background, I mean, in addition to like her nickname, often even before her military service, was as like General Tubman. That was actually John Brown's nickname for her,
Really?
because he wanted her to be a general with him during unfortunately his claim to fame. But then, she was very clearly identified because of the fact that really all of these more than 70 attempts, and successful attempts, I should say, successful forays when she was rescuing others, it made very clear that when the Civil War broke out, that she would be such an asset in terms of like espionage, in terms of an understanding of the territory, in terms of like, and just in having read this biography, which we should also actually drop in the description link afterward, Sarah, just like the sorts of things that she would have to do, like the ways that she would, how do I put this, like distract others who were potentially like on the very close heels of slaves that she was helping to escort. Her knowledge of like medicinal herbs in terms of different areas. So all of that was employed in her military service. And she worked as a nurse, she worked as a medic, she worked as a spy. And then here was where she really was, she led this military assault. And so I think first and foremost, to even just realize that the surprising parts of her history and how there's actually so much more richness to it that people don't necessarily get when you learn about Harriet Tubman in your history class and stuff like that. But then, so she does these incredible things for on behalf of the Union, correct? And then the thing that is really tricky is, and the reason why we tongue-in-cheek named our episode Harriet Tubman Secures the Bag, is it took her something like 35 years to get any kind of pension for her military service. Initially, what she had received was actually as a widow. So it wasn't even in recognition of anything that she had done. It was because her second husband had, I think, served in the military. But you know, and like I have to, well, actually, I overlooked two very important details that I wanted to mention in the earlier part. One was that when Harriet Tubman, according to this biography, when Harriet Tubman was in the Civil War, you know, being this nurse, being this medic, being this spy, for much of that, she was paying her own way to participate. She was at one point, I think, you know, kind of given sums of like $200 or something here and there, which of course back in the 1800s was no small sum of money. But like she wasn't on any kind of payroll as a soldier or as a nurse or as an anything. She was actually, you know, the more I read about her, she was just an incredibly entrepreneurial woman, frankly. And so she, in addition to all of these different kinds of activities, she was actually like, she had like a wash service, and she was making money from that so that she could pay her own way. She was like, she had set up like a kind of like a food and beverage thing where she was like making like root beer and like baking things and like selling those so that she could be paying her way. So even for all of this extraordinary service, she, like during the time of it, she wasn't really paid and remunerated properly. And then afterwards, like she had to go through this whole petitioning process over the span of about 35 years before she would be given any kind of, you know, regular pension in recognition of her service. And the pension didn't even, that was one of the reasons why when there was all of that that publicity around potentially her face becoming the new face for the $20 bill. One of the reasons why that felt particularly poignant for a lot of folks was because the pension that she fought for 35 years was the amount of $20 a month. So that was one reason why people thought it was especially apropos. And yeah, I mean, I'm curious, Sarah, just like, do you have any sorts of reactions as far as this side of Harriet Tubman that people aren't often aware of?
I mean, it's just amazing to me. I think we were talking about this initially, and we were just saying the legend grows. You know, she. I mean, what a person, just to do all of this and have this incredible passion, you know, for others, this zest for life. I mean, just really, I think incredible, and just a figure in history that you know, can't be any more celebrated. Or should be more celebrated, I think.
And just for folks to be aware that the myth, the legend of Harriet Tubman, you know, she's full of surprises. So people should expect that we'll be revisiting other parts of her story that are lesser known in future episodes. But with that, I think this is the close of today's episode. And to make sure that, again, in terms of like our housekeeping, that, you know, all of those organizations that we had identified at the top of the show, Minority Veterans of America, and those coalitions and whatnot, we'll be making sure to share those links. And otherwise, you know, we want to really just remind people that with the story of Harriet Tubman, that and juxtaposing that with veterans issues now, that, you know, often if history doesn't exactly, like, what's that quote? Like, if history doesn't exactly repeat itself, it often rhymes, right? And so how we can make sure to keep that in mind, as, you know, what veterans are going through now is that we need to be doing better. Like what it should not have taken Harriet Tubman 35 years to get her pension. It should not have taken this long for Minority Veterans of America to be able to sit in a session on veterans issues. So whatever that we collectively can be doing towards being instruments for change ourselves. That's, I think, the ultimate ambition with the kind of work that we're doing here at TDU.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And thank you for closing us out that way. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Encourage people to come back next week as we just kind of continue exploring activism, instruments for change, and classical music. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and comment and tell us kind of your thoughts on everything that we shared today. We read every single comment, and we would love to hear from you. But we'll hope to see you next week as we continue this journey together. So thank you all so much.